Hey there, wrongfully accused convicts. I'm the Comics Kid 2099 here to discuss an episode of Superman the Animated Series titled The Late Mr.Kent. If you haven't seen the episode, then spoilers! Clark Kent dies for real! Just kidding, but seriously, go watch the episode before I spoil something for real. Really soon. Like now, when I go into the plot synopsis. So Clark Kent is investigating a wrongfully accused man's conviction when his car is blown up with him inside. Of course, he's okay, because nigh invulnerability and all that, but as far as the rest of the world knows, Clark isn't nigh invulnerable, so now Superman has to save the innocent man and find a way to return to his normal life as Clark Kent. Hilarity ensues. So immediately, this episode grabs your attention like no other episode of this series has so far. In a way, it reminds me of the offbeat episodes of Batman the Animated Series, like POV or Dreams in Darkness. It's got a very noir feeling to it, which is never something that I would have thought would work with Superman, but it does work extremely well. Now, I wouldn't want to see every episode have the dame had legs up to her eyes narration like this one does, but it's really neat to see that every once in a while. And this episode is built on a pretty neat premise. What happens when Clark Kent is air quotes killed? This isn't exactly anything new to Superman. More recently, Clark had to abandon his Clark persona in Gene Luen Yang's Superman run in the comics. We also saw it as an almost throwaway idea in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow about a decade before this episode aired. But what's impressive about this episode is that it's able to use the Clark Kent is dead but Superman is not idea and not break the status quo. Both of the aforementioned examples from the comics were either big status quo changing deals or were in some alternate universe anyway where the status quo didn't really matter. Here, the creative minds behind this episode were able to pull this off and restore things back to normal, and I totally bought it. The fisherman with the eyesight problems, Lois picking up Clark's investigation and not even getting close to figuring out that Clark is Superman, I totally buy all of that. And this episode packs the emotional moments too. Sure, we know that Clark is still alive, and if you're watching the episode for the first time, you're pretty sure that Clark will somehow come back, but it's still touching and a little sad to see the Daily Planet people at Clark's funeral, and see Jimmy crying at the funeral, which is at night for some reason, and then Lois crying later when she's talking to Superman. That's all really great stuff. Granted, this episode does remind me once again that this series never did dive as much into Lois and Clark's relationship, both platonically and eventually romantically, as I would have liked. We've already had the episode where Lois realizes that Superman likes her, and she should probably ask him out on a date, which hasn't really been followed up on. But now we have this episode where Lois realizes that she likes Clark. Maybe when she tells Superman that, it's ambiguous which like she means, likes him as a friend or as a lover. But still, this would have been a really good moment in the series for Lois to realize that she maybe has feelings for Clark. You wouldn't have to immediately have Lois asking Clark on a date, but maybe she realizes she has feelings for Clark and Superman, and she has to choose which guy she wants to pursue, if she can pursue Superman. And yeah, the episode kinda hints that she's jealous that Clark contacted Lana instead of her, but I took that more to mean that Lois is back to ribbing Clark like she used to, especially when that's how things are after this episode. Now, it's not a major part of this episode, so it's not a deal breaker or anything like that, but when looking at this episode in the context of the overall series, it is kinda disappointing that later episodes didn't take advantage of this as a possible huge game changer. My only real complaint about this episode is the mystery angle. In a commentary for an episode of Batman Beyond, Paul Dini mentioned how tough it was to do mystery episodes, especially in a 22-minute episode. You have the person that the episode wants you to think did it, and so they obviously did not do it, so it's the only other person in the episode who had motive or opportunity, or in some cases, the only other character in the episode. But in this case, the episode doesn't even go through that much effort. It actually is the person that we think it is from the very beginning. When we see a silhouette in the parking garage, it looks like the corrupt cop who tried to dissuade Clark from looking into this case. And sure enough, it is him. I want to give this episode a little bit of a pass because this is focusing so much on Clark's dilemma, so it doesn't have time to set up a red herring to distract us from the mystery angle, except that we don't even have any motive for our bad guy to do what he does. Sure, he doesn't want people to find out that he killed a woman and framed a thief for it, so he tries to cover that up, but why did he kill the woman in the first place? Was he working for Bruno Mannheim? Was it a lover's quarrel? We get nothing on that front. And that, on top of the episode kinda half-butting it on the mystery aspect, does warrant a few demerits here. Although I do want to end on a positive note, so I'll say I really like that they brought back the grumpy cop from Target, and this time actually made him the bad guy. I guess some people who remember this guy from that episode might think, nah, they tried to make us think that he was the assassin in that episode, so surely he isn't here. Except that I could only barely remember him from that episode, and actually had to double check to make sure that it was the same guy. But I do like that they brought him back at least. So those are my thoughts on this episode of Superman the Animated Series. What did you guys think of the episode and of my review? Let me know in the comments below, and in the meantime, I'll probably be back next week to talk about another episode of this series. In the meantime, catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one.